broadcast.
The broadcast is now starting. All are in listen-only mode.
Hello, folks, and welcome to our Women Bike webinar today, August 6th. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a great presentation about Girl Scouts on Wheels from Katie Monroe, who is the Bike Share Outreach Coordinator at the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia, but for the purposes of this webinar, also the founder of Women Bike PHL and their initiative reaching out specifically to Girl Scouts. So we are, forgive me for any technical difficulties as I switch slides. So this webinar is presented by Women Bike, which many of you know is a program of the League of American Bicyclists, and we're actually very excited to be coming up on our second anniversary. And our goal is really simple and ambitious at the same time. Our goal is to create pathways for women of diverse backgrounds to embrace biking as an everyday activity and participate as riders, advocates, and leaders in the movement. So there's really four primary ways that we do that. First of all, we organize national events like the National Women's Bicycling Forum that happens every year in March. We share stories from around the country through our e-news and our social media presence. We create original research and compile research from around the country that helps provide the information that gives you all the basis to do the work to get more women riding in your community around campaigns and organizing. We also provide events like this, webinars, and ways to connect with best practices and ideas from around the country. And we also provide support to start and seed and spread ideas like Katie's, like the Girl Scouts on Wheels, so that these types of really new cutting-edge initiatives have the resources to get started and to flourish. So none of this would be possible without our very, very generous Women Bike sponsors. Our leading sponsors this year are heartfelt gratitude to VeloJoy and New Belgium Brewing Company, and also Live Giant, Fuji, and Specialized Women. And like I said, one of the ways that we support women on the ground, we use this funding, our sponsorship dollars, to support local efforts at the grassroots. So we're coming to the close of the first year of Women Bike mini grants that we awarded, one of which went to the Girl Scouts on Wheels campaign. And so at the end of each funding cycle, we ask our grantees to put together a toolkit so that the folks who have heard about Katie's work in Philadelphia and think, this might work in my community, working with the Girl Scouts Council, that all of you have those resources and kind of the tips and skills and the strategies that were used to make that campaign a success. So I'm sure many of you earlier this year might have been on our webinar and have taken advantage of the Washington Area Bicyclists Association Women and Bicycles Toolkit. They were one of our grant-funded programs in 2013 and have put together a phenomenal toolkit that you can take pieces of that successful program and put them to work in your community. So you can see all of those toolkits, and over the next coming weeks we'll be doing webinars such as this for all of the 2013 mini grants, and those are at the URL on the screen right now, bikeleague.org/content/womenbikefunding. So we invite you to check those out and make use of these toolkits. And just another shout out in terms of what's coming up for Women Bike. We have the National Women's Bicycling Forum earlier in the year, but we also do an event every 2 years at the Pro Walk, Pro Bike, Pro Place conference. And this year Women Bike is teaming up with our Equity Initiative, putting together an event that we're calling Future Bike. And it's really focusing on how do we get more women, more communities of color, more youth, really start to build the movement in an inclusive way, looking at leadership, looking at messaging, looking at how we plan our streets for not only folks who are single adults commuting to work, but women who are going to the grocery store in cargo bikes with their kids. So I definitely invite you to join us at that event where we'll be talking about topics like we're discussing here today. That again is September 11th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you can learn more at bikeleague.org/futurebike. But now on to the content of the day. Like I said, Katie Monroe is with the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. She's been one of the leading visionaries really in the women bike movement across the country. Has started the Women Bike PHL group that has been working specifically with women, and then based on her background in the Girl Scouts as a child, had this brilliant idea to connect with the Girl Scout Council. And I'll just throw a real quick note in that, one of the reasons we were really compelled by this particular project was because we know that there's this gap that happens when it comes to creating a pipeline from youth to adulthood, specifically for girls. At about age 14, we see this really precipitous drop where boys continue to ride bicycles at a relatively significant rate, whereas girls, there's a lot of trepidation. They don't see their peers riding as much. There's just a lot of things at play that we really need to be focusing on. How do we keep the next generation of riders from having that gap where they have to readopt bicycling in adulthood rather than continuing their trajectory from the joy of learning as a child right on into using a bike for transportation or recreation as an adult. So we thought that this partnership with the Girl Scouts is something that might work in your community too, and as Katie will share, has been very successful in Philadelphia. So I am going to change presenters now and turn it over to Katie.
Can people see my screen? Did it work?
Let's see.
Looks good to me, Katie.
Okay, great. Thank you all for joining me today to talk about one of my favorite topics, Girl Scouts and bicycles together. I really appreciate the introduction, Carolyn, and obviously definitely really appreciate the support that we were able to get from the League to be able to do this project. Definitely wouldn't have been possible otherwise, and this was my pipe dream from the beginning of coming into the Bicycle Coalition, so I feel really fortunate to have made it happen, and even more fortunate to be able to share it with other people and hopefully replicate it in other places too. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of how it came about, what the project consists of, and then we're going to talk through the sort of toolkit that I wrote out about how to get there from wherever you are in your community. And then I will be happy to take questions at the end. I think that you can type in your questions as we go along, and then I'll take some time to answer them when we're done. So this is a program of Women Bike PHL, which is the women's outreach program at the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia, where I work. These are some pictures of my Girl Scout troop from when I was in high school. The arrow there is me looking really cool. This is my Girl Scout leader. I had some great experiences riding bikes when I was a Girl Scout, and also just a lot of great experiences as a Girl Scout in general. It was really formative for me, taught me a lot of things, and I really saw the power that might be able to have for encouraging riding a bicycle. This is just a little bit about Women Bike PHL, which is the program that I started. It's a general women's bike outreach program related to the ones that you heard, the Women and Bicycles program. It's a little bit similar to that. We do rides, classes, events in Philadelphia to encourage more women to ride bikes. But as you can see here, we mostly interact with adult women in that capacity, and I really wanted there to be a youth component of the work that we were doing with Women Bike PHL, but I'm not a youth development expert. I don't have all of this background and skills and relationships, but what I did have was 10 years of being a Girl Scout under my belt. And what Girl Scouts has, at least in our area, is 41,000 girls who are involved in the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania. So rather than start from scratch, rather than have an event where we ask, parents to show up with their kids or something like that, I thought it would maybe be a little more efficient use of my time to leverage the existing network of Girl Scouts and try to tap into the structures that they already have in terms of troops and leaders and all that. So taken a shortcut. So that's how Girl Scouts on Wheels was born as an idea, with a combination of these ideas and the monetary support from the league. So this is a picture of the patch. Girls Bike PHL. It's actually, so it's the same logo as Women Bike PHL. We just put Girls Bike PHL on it. And yeah, so I'm going to share a few models because there's not just one way of doing this, and then hopefully some other locations will be empowered to try it. So first, I just wanted to take you through the basics of the curriculum. I set it up to be similar to existing badges and patches in the structure of what you have to do to earn it. And so in this case, I structured it to have sort of 5 sections with 3 options within each section. So to earn the patch, you have to do one thing from each of these categories. And so I can share the full curriculum with anyone who's interested, but for the sake of this presentation, just one example is under A World of Biking. There's the option to either explore some women in bicycle-related careers. It's a really good opportunity to have like a guest speaker at a troop meeting or something like that. Learn about bicycle organizations in your area and people that are doing, organizations that are doing work with bicycles. So this is our Youth Earn a Bike program that we, organization that we have in Philly. That would be a good example of that. And then do some research into biking elsewhere. One of the things I really liked about Girl Scouts is I felt like it really empowered us to figure out how to seek the information that we wanted ourselves. I didn't feel like I was handed stuff from my troop leader. I was told, we got to figure this out. Where are you going to go figure it out? So learning about what biking is like in another place besides where you live seemed like a cool thing to give girls an option to do. So that is the idea. I designed it to be aimed at junior level girls, which is like that preteen, early teen age that Carolyn was talking about, that girls drop off at their interest in biking often, but it's certainly something that can be customized based on the age of the girls involved. You know, we all can interact with bikes in our different ways, so it's nothing set in stone, and certainly whatever you guys design can be whatever you want it to be. So I'm going to basically take you through 3 different cases of how girls who came into contact with the Girl Scouts on Wheels program were able to earn this patch, because there's not just one way of doing it. So for the first case, this is an example of partnering again to leverage existing networks, partnering with the Girl Scouts at Penn. The University of Pennsylvania has a student program called Girl Scouts at Penn where it's like part of their business school, I think, actually, where students at Penn organize large-scale events for Girl Scout troops in the area, mostly Girl Scout troops in West Philadelphia. And it's like an all-day event where you earn multiple patches that are about a certain topic. So this was the theme, this was spring of last year, was Stand Up and Get Fit. So they did like a food health-related patch, and then they did this Girl Scout patch. And so a lot of the logistics of the event were already taken care of by this UPenn group. And then we came in and used a big public space in the middle of Penn's campus to do a bike rodeo and a bunch of other different stations such that a Girl Scout troop could come and earn the whole patch in one day. We partnered with some other groups. We partnered with Neighborhood Bike Works, that youth organization that we saw, the partnership with Girl Scouts of Penn. We got volunteers from the Women Bike PHL program that we run, and we used the youth bikes that we have in our inventory at the Bicycle Coalition for this event. And it was a great success. This is learning the different parts of the bike. They put them on with pipe cleaners, and they had to learn them, and then they took them off and they had to put them back on. Pretty cute. Doing a bike rodeo, there's the start line, and they had to go between cones and stuff, and these are some volunteers from a local bike club. And they got pedaling. Look at those sneakers. Pretty cool sneakers. So that's the first case, like an existing large-scale Girl Scout event. Second case was a troop leader who was really already a really good cyclist, knew everything about how to teach bike stuff, and she just needed basically the idea and the curriculum, and she just made it her own. I sent her some stickers, but they used their own bike, and they just sent me pictures when they were done. So this was the easiest possible. This is the ideal situation. I didn't have to do anything. They just completely earned it on their own and really did an amazing job. Yeah, so see some pictures. Found a parking lot to do it. And then the last case is sort of a mix between the first two. So the troop leader was really interested but didn't have as much biking experience to be able to pull it off on her own. So I came in and helped a little bit. So we did a little mini bike rodeo in this really cute cemetery that's blocked off to cars, which was nice. Then we did a little ride, and then I ended up coming later to their troop meeting to present them with the patches. And then they also fulfilled some of the requirements on their own in their troop meetings. So it was a combination. So here's some cute Girl Scout pictures. They're holding their patches. That one's a little blurry, but so that's sort of an overview of how it works. And I wanted to, what I think most people are probably most interested in is how do you make this happen? How did you get from the start to what it is now? And so I want to take you through, there's a toolkit that will be available on the Women Bike, the League website, and this is just the overview of it, but then you'll be able to get that for yourself. But I wanted to take you through it a little bit here. So my process was first to sort of get the lay of the land and do some research. So it's important for me to note that no existing national level bicycle patch or badge existed as far as I could tell from doing a little bit of research. If there had already been one, I wouldn't have made one. I would have just said, oh, let's help girls earn this one. Let's provide more support for the existing structure. I would not have started from scratch. But there was no national level one. And in my Girl Scout Council, Girl Scouts are kind of, there's also different levels, but it's organized by council is the area. So in the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, there was no regional Girl Scout patch either. So that's why I created one. An important thing to also understand, if you're not familiar with the Girl Scout structure, is that there's badges that are like official Girl Scout sanctioned things that you have to, you have to get it from the Girl Scouts. It's like published in the Girl Scout books and stuff. And then there are also patches, and patches are much less formal. If your troop goes bowling, you can just order a bowling patch and get it. There's not necessarily as many requirements. So technically what I created was a patch that sort of looks like a badge. So it's not, I have the patches. When troops earn it, I send them the patches. It's not officially in any Girl Scout book anywhere, but as I will explain in a bit, I did engage with my local council, get them interested in the idea and excited about it, but it's not an official badge. But there might be one, like a regional one where you live. So definitely look for that first before you start from scratch. But in my case, there wasn't one, so I wrote a curriculum, and I modeled it after the existing badges that I saw, the badge curriculums as I described, with 5 sections and 3 options within each section. And then I can share that with you, but that was my step 2. And then once I had that in hand, I reached out to my local Girl Scout Council, and this is the part of the process where it can be a little confusing. It's a really big organization. It's sometimes hard to tell who is the right person to talk to, but Girl Scouts are surprisingly everywhere. So if you are a membership-based organization, ask your board if anybody knows somebody in Girl Scouts. Start with who you already know, and then if that doesn't pan out, then make a cold call. But just kind of getting in, they have so many programs and so much already going on in Girl Scouts that sometimes it's a little difficult to get the conversation going. But once you do get a meeting with somebody, you can, you'll have your curriculum in hand, your idea of what you want their approval for, and then hopefully they'll be on board. And as we all know, there's a lot of different ways to make the case for biking being important for youth and for girls especially. So whatever seems to work best for the Girl Scout folks that you're working with. For me, there was a strong emphasis on fitness, and the Girl Scout Council was actually planning to do a youth triathlon. So I kind of went at it from that angle and talking to them about why it was important. I was thinking about health and fitness and wellness, but obviously there's a lot of other dimensions too in terms of environmental stewardship, or there's many options for how you can go about making the case for bicycling. For me, the fitness aspect works the best. Funding is great. For me, the funding went towards a little bit of my time to be able to work on this, ordering the patches themselves, and a little bit of equipment to to use to get places. You know, the zip car van we had to rent to bring the bikes to that one event, stuff like that. But it's also like a pretty low budget endeavor in general. So depending on what your resources are, if you're working out of an organization, you might be able to swing it. And then I had to tell people that this patch was available once I had everything else in place. And this was the part that was kind of amazing. I thought it would require a lot of like working with Girl Scouts to get it in all of the newsletters and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, there are just Girl Scout leaders everywhere. It's a pretty it permeates a lot of different things. So we were able to put a post on our blog at the Bicycle Coalition, put some social media stuff out there, and I just started getting emails from troop leaders pretty quickly. And then the troop leaders tell each other about everything. It was a pretty steady stream for a little while there, and we kind of have to make another announcement. It was a little slow over the winter, but now things are, back in swing. It was surprisingly easy to get the word out, and it seemed very much like something that the troop leaders were consistently interested in and had sort of been like waiting for. So that was cool to realize that the Girl Scout leaders are kind of everywhere, and once you hit a few of them, then they tell all the other ones. And then for the events themselves, so getting the word out, getting people interested, figuring out which of those categories they're in. Like they want to come to an existing event, or they want to do it all on their own, or they want to do it partially on their own, but they need some resources from you or your organization. And then the volunteer recruitment piece, especially for the events that I was actually actively involved in, was also surprisingly easy given the existing Women Bike network. It's like the easiest thing to recruit someone for. Do you want to come out and help some Girl Scouts learn how to ride their bikes? It's just this pretty lovely thing to recruit people to volunteer for. Yeah, and then 7 is do the dang thing. So that was pretty much my process. And there's a little more detail, including in the toolkit. I even include the website where I ordered the patches. It was pretty easy to send a custom design in, but they also have some just basic generic biking ones if you wanted to order those to work. So there's some good concrete info in there about just sort of the logistics of it. So that is basically I think I was like maybe 5 minutes less than I was supposed to take. But that's me on the B-Cycle bike share bike that Philly will have in the spring of 2015. And that's my email address and my Twitter handle. So we're going to have some time for question and answer, but also feel free to reach out later if you think of a question later. I'm really excited to be able to do this in Philly, but ultimately really excited to see if we can get it to pop up in some other places too. I think it's the type of partnership that's really replicable and really efficient use of time and resources because all of the infrastructure already exists. One final thing that I wanted to say just as an example of how it's so efficient to tap into existing infrastructure is in any given troop, it could be that a girl or two girls doesn't necessarily have a bike. Like a lot of kids have bikes more than than I expected going into it, but there's always somebody that doesn't have a bike. And when you're working with a Girl Scout troop where the Girl Scout leader knows all of the parents, she can just say, does anyone have an extra bike? And it magically worked out at the events that we've done so far where we weren't providing the bikes. We haven't had any trouble with enough bikes turning up for all of the girls that were involved. For every girl that doesn't have a bike, some other parent can provide 2 bikes and an extra one for that girl. So, and that's the type of thing that would be very difficult for me to organize as an outside person, but just happened naturally and very smoothly when you're tapping into this existing community of Girl Scouts and existing setup of a Girl Scout troop that they all know each other. So that was one like really heartening moment of like, wow, this works. So I just wanted to share that anecdote. But okay, now that is what I've got. So I look forward to hearing some questions from the group. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Katie. So I had as questions are coming in, I had a quick question, which is, I think that a lot of folks sometimes feel a little bit hesitant about working with youth, just because there's maybe a conception that the liability issues are going to be different, or there's just going to be different things that they're going to have to take into account. Did you encounter that at all, or is that another benefit of, like you said, kind of tapping into this infrastructure that already existed and partnering with the Girl Scouts, that wasn't really an issue?
That's a really good question. So I think partially we benefited from tapping into Girl Scouts. They have certain rules, and you can volunteer a certain amount without having to get the child abuse clearances. But if you are going to be more engaged with it, you have to. So they lay out that pretty easily, which was nice to feel like you understood what the rules were. But also I benefited from the existing programming that the Bicycle Coalition has for youth. So we kind of had ideas of how to do, all the bike rodeos and youth learn to rides and stuff. We already had that under our belt, so that was a huge advantage when we were starting this program. We kind of had some of the stuff we needed to know already sorted out, and some experience with working with youth, and the understanding that you have to get special waivers if you're going to take pictures, etc. So I think it was a combination of the existing network of Girl Scouts, making it very clear what the rules were, and also the fact that we had some institutional knowledge with our Safe Routes Philly program. So that's kind of how it worked out for us. Between those two institutions, we were able to have the knowledge that we needed. But I agree that it could be a little bit intimidating if you're just starting out and you haven't done a lot of work with youth. So I would suggest, if I were kind of operating independently, that I probably would have reached out to Neighborhood Bike Works, the Youth Earn a Bike program that we have in Philadelphia, or some existing entity that works with youth to try to sort of help navigate those questions if we hadn't already known some of the answers to them.
Great. So we have a question that relates to cost. Are troops generally in a position to help defray costs even though they are minimal?
That's a great question. So I set up this program to not require troops to pay, and that was really nice, especially depending on the socioeconomic status of the girls in the troop. Although one cool thing about Girl Scouts is how diverse individual troops can be on that front, which is part of why I really wanted to work with them. But I didn't charge troops anything, but they seemed willing to pay. So I think that that's definitely something worth exploring and trying out a nominal fee for the services that you would provide to them. I think that's, Girl Scout troops have budgets. They, that's part of what the girls are learning, is how to budget and spend the money that they earn. So I think that that is totally reasonable, and it seemed feasible from the responses that I got to charge fees for coming out to do a bike rodeo, or, sending the patches themselves, or we had Safe Routes Philly workbooks that we already had about bike and pedestrian safety that we sent out. So yeah, I would say that's something to definitely explore. We didn't do it, but the enthusiasm seemed to be strong enough that troops might be able to pay, yes.
Great. So we have a question related to kind of connecting folks who have experience with putting on rodeos and organizing volunteers, and I think that from the league perspective, we do have some resources on, how to put on a rodeo, and a little bit of information on volunteer recruitment and that kind of stuff. But that's a really interesting question, and one of the reasons why we have been working through the Women Bike program to create toolkits like this is to create that knowledge that can be shared in a more replicable way. But that's something that we can certainly share out after the webinar to the attendees if y'all are interested in links about putting on rodeos and things like that. As Katie said, that's a big piece of knowledge you need going into it, probably.
Mm-hmm. And I was able to just pull that type of information from either just the knowledge of the staff that I'm working with already, and the stuff that I've already done with Safe Routes, but also there's a Safe Routes Philly website that has some just like how to lead a bike rodeo type information. So that was really helpful to me for the stuff that I wasn't completely sure about. So I can also share that into the toolkit too.
Excellent. So this is a question I always ask everyone, but what was kind of the biggest surprise in terms of something that was really easy, and what was the biggest challenge you had to overcome, Katie?
So I think that the challenge kind of just came at the beginning in terms of figuring out how to start the conversation with this huge organization of Girl Scouts. It's, they get so many ideas all the time. They have so many programs running all the time. It can be difficult to convince somebody that your little idea is, worthy of their time. But once I actually got the meeting and had the conversation, there was enthusiasm. There was definitely more caution about safety concerns on the part of the council and like the higher up folks than there was from the troop leaders and the parents, which is interesting. When it came down to the troop level, the troops were all like, yeah, let's go for it, ride bikes, sounds good, just wear a helmet. But there was definitely some pushback and concern about safety from the council, and I think that that was part of the reason why didn't necessarily like immediately become a badge. It's still sort of like my thing that Girl Scouts is doing. So I think that the concerns about safety are definitely a challenge, but it ended up being not as big of a concern once I was actually interacting with the troop leaders and the troops and the parents themselves. The most surprising thing, I was just surprised how well it worked. At the end of the day, like actually going to these events and seeing Girl Scouts actually just riding bikes and learning the skills, because so much of the work was already done by Girl Scouts having organized all of these kids together and having their troop leader that they know and trust. It made it very easy for me to kind of just swoop in and provide some programming to an existing structure in a way that it's more of a struggle with, the Women Bike PHL programming that I do for adults. Not everyone knows each other starting out. There's more logistics to figure out. People are coming from different places. It was I think it was just surprising how smoothly it went to me, because my experience had been that it's harder to wrangle people, and then it ended up not being that hard when they're already organized into troops. So that's my roundabout answer.
Excellent. Yeah, that's something that, we have an equity toolkit that's going to be coming out later in September, and it addresses some women bike issues, but larger issues as well. And one of the things that I kept coming back to as I was interviewing folks and understanding a lot of the most successful programs is that partnership is really, it's such a key aspect of success in these initiatives. And so, tapping into that existing infrastructure and doing it in a way that really meets the needs and the interests of the organization, that's really such a critical pathway to success. So I'm so glad to see that happening here too. So we have another question, but it's not a question, and it might be a good note to end on. We were hoping to keep this to about half an hour. So this might be heartening to you, Katie, that we are hearing that Girl Scouts of Minnesota and the Wisconsin River Valley is very excited about this idea, and they're hoping to organize something similar.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Well, definitely feel free to reach out if you have any more questions.
Yeah.
Them and anybody.
Yeah, so with that, we will, unless there's any last burning questions as I'm kind of wrapping up, I'm going to share my screen if I can figure that out. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. So in terms of getting connected to Women Bike, certainly I would urge everyone, if you're not already, to subscribe to our e-news, which is about every month. Go to our website, bikeweek.org/womenbike to do that. We are just about to hit 5,000 followers on our Women Bike Facebook, so if you are not part of that yet, please do join us there. And we're also on Twitter @WomenBike, and we're blogging about Women Bike stories and toolkits and campaigns like Katie's on pretty much a weekly basis. And you can find that at bikeweek.org/blog. And like I said, we'll be doing additional toolkit webinars like this over the next few weeks, rolling out all of our grant awardees from 2013. And of course, if you have any questions or ideas, this is about to be an outdated slide, but you can contact me, Carolyn, at bikeweek.org, and let us know what's going on in your community, and of course reach out to Katie specifically about the Girl Scouts on Wheels program. So again, I just wanted to thank Katie not only for joining us today, but for all the amazing work that you've done over the past year with the Girl Scouts and with Women Bike PHL, and look forward to continuing the discussion about getting more women biking across the U.S. with you, Katie, and all of the folks who joined us here today. So thanks to everyone for joining us, and we will see and connect with you soon.